Okay, so on the topic of briefs, here is the next version. I think this is part 3. So I basically have this UI that at the moment is working quite nicely. Has a couple of bugs that need to be fixed. So what I've done was I basically create very detailed briefs, which I will show you here. So what I do is I have, again, this service that I can come in, I can say, hey, take this repo, take this part of the code base and give me everything. So this basically gives me 61 files with all the source code. And then what I do is I put it here as a brief. I also include this sort of iterative flow development brief. So that helps the LLM to understand my approach of development. And then I basically say this: we finished 1.4, we're going to 1.5, read the documents, understand, and then I again double down on make sure you understand these principles, etc. And then just give me the base index pages for 1.5, right? So he reads this, it's quite cool, he understands the AFD. This is quite important because every now and then he doesn't get this fully right, but now there's enough code examples already in the structure to get it, and then he creates it and he gives me the files. So now I got that. So this basically is what you have here. So this is 1.5. Again, looks the same, but what's very important is you can see here that we now have the 1.5 file, which then uses the files from the previous versions, 1.1, 1.4, 1.3, etc. So that's what we want. And that's literally the idea of this one, so that every time I make a change, I'm just reusing specific bits. So it gets much easier to modify, right? So basically, once you have this, and then what I've done was I gave it 5 screenshots, and for every screenshot I say, look, the current layout is not intuitive, we need to make better use of the screen, we need to start having UIs and this. And what's cool about this is I'm verbalizing my thinking, right? I'm evolving my thinking, as you see in a second. So, I say we need to make much simpler samples, and then we're missing an input box, etc., right? And that's where I'm now starting to really define that, look, what we need is this workflow where you go from original HTML to HTML dictionary, and then the hashes, and then the created. And again, this is very important. Don't write any code, because or else freaking Claude just goes to town, right? So it does an analysis, and then this is very important when it replays back to us what he understands, because it really shows me that we are on the right track versus not. Sometimes we're not, and then we need to adjust. So that you got, the structure here and the reverse, and then some key points he makes, etc. And then he asks some good questions, right? So this is the questions for me. And then what's interesting about my answers here is you could also see the evolution of my thinking, right? So my answers on layout, I think we should show the same time those 4 status, because at the moment it's not very easy. In the direction of the flows, we can make from left to right, etc. In fact, here I go, I'm thinking about this because ultimately isn't the HTML dict and the hash the unit itself? So because they're independent from each other, changing the dict doesn't impact the hashes. So why don't we make the 3 columns like that, right? And then say, let's get the layout right. And now this is great because look, he goes column architecture. This is exactly what I had in mind, right? And now it makes sense to put these 2 here and those there, and then key design decisions. They are independent, left to right. Middle column is a unit. Again, really capture that idea, which in a way I define here, right? That's what I had in my head. I just hadn't verbalized it very effectively. So you can see that the brief evolves, right? Transformation buttons, keep it simple. So we focus here. Let's not get any viewers for now, etc. And then there's the plan, right? So I go, yeah, this is perfect. By the way, I just used this because I thought that this was too simple, and these are quite good. And then he goes to town, right? He does this, actually took 6 minutes to map the whole thing and created these great files. So let me just show you where I created, because it's pretty awesome, right? So look, first of all, he created the playground HTML, which I'll look in a second. He created and the index. So these are the 2 fixed files. And then he has a nice start here page, right? To read the information. So he starts to give you information, what it is, the layout, but actually there's some better ones here. The quick start is a variation of that. The README is now a nice updated information about what we've done. It goes to town. I won't call it revolutionary, but every now and then it gets a bit too excited. And then, but this is really cool, right? Like you could start to see the structure of the 3 columns, the bits, what we're using for each one, the layout diagram. I think this is how cool is this, right? Like, and by the way, I haven't seen the code yet, but I have now a very good understanding of what has been done, right? That should match this. So this is now what the UI would look like. That's the next video, but you can see there's the sample HTML, and look, compare. This is what it looks like at the moment, right? So the new UI is going to look like this, which is exactly what we want. We pick this, we see the files here, we click that button, bang, 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 we click that button, it goes from there. So you now have a nice flow from left to right. There's then the file structure, and this is again really good understanding of the iterative flow development, IDF, where in this version, we're only changing the bits that are needed, right? So you could see this is starting to be quite good because now we're only changing the little bits. And there's a little sweet bit here where before the samples was actually HTML pages, and now it actually created a samples.js, which is probably a better way to do it because now it's just a JavaScript file that contains the previous code, right? Which makes sense. So a nice little addition to the thing, and there you go. But then reuse components. So how cool is that? So the next thing is to actually put this in practice, bring it to the code base and see what it looks like.